welcome to Tracy Momi Reads. I'm back again with another book review. Today, I'm going to be reviewing The Inmate by Freida McFadden. The Inmate. You know I can't stay away from those mystery suspense books, so don't even be acting surprised. I feel like I have read a book by Freida McFadden, but like off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of it, but it sounds real familiar, her name. But if I haven't, I'm definitely going to be going out to read more of her books because I really, really liked her writing style. So The Inmate, as you can imagine, and as you can see from the cover, I mean, there's a whole jail, prison scene happening here. So in the blurb, it talks about how this woman gets a job at a prison, and basically she's like worried that she's gonna run into like her first love there because she's the one that sent him to prison. So that's out the gate, like in the blurb. I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of what the book is about, and that's what you learn before you even start reading page 1. So I mean, it started off really good because it jumped right into it. I mean, at the beginning of the book, like we're going through the main character, her name is Brooke. We're going through Brooke's first day, at the jail. And the story is told in a set of flashbacks, as most of these books are, because there's always a crime. It seems there's always a crime and revenge, things like that in these type of books. And so when you go through present day to see what's going on, you have to go back with some backstory as to how you got, to present day. And that's what happens. Brooke, they're young. I don't even think they're 30 yet. So I think 7 to 10 years have passed, maybe. I think it's 7 to 10 years have passed, because everything that happened prior to her ex, his name is Shane, and prior to him going to jail, happened when they were in high school. So like their senior year or the end of their junior year or something like that is when everything happened. And then like you fast forward the 7 to 10 years later, to the aftermath. And I just really love when authors in this genre are able to give you all these red herrings and create doubt, and again make you think who did it, and then you are wrong. Or even if you realize who actually did it was maybe the person you thought did it to begin with, they throw in another what that you still didn't see coming, whether it be their reasoning for doing it, whether it be they had an accomplice, whether it be they weren't really who you thought they were to begin with. And that's the case in The Inmate. There's just so many moving pieces. There's a scene in the book, like when they're in high school, where, they're being typical teens, I suppose, even though I never did anything like this. But how the kids tell the lie, oh, I'm going to go spend the night with Jenny. And, they actually end up going with their boyfriend or whatever. Well, it was like 3 of them, for a total of 6, because it was 3 couples, right? They stayed at the house, at Shane's house. He lived out, some secluded area on this farm or in this old farmhouse. And the whole time I was reading that portion of the book, I was like thinking of a horror movie, because there was like some horror elements at that point of what was going on. I swear it was like a cheesy teen, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street type vibe happening at one point in the book. So yeah, so there's a bit of murder and gore that happens in the past, which kind of is the reason why Shane, is in jail, for being accused of that crime. The other twist that happens early I don't even know if it's a twist. I can't find the blurb, but Brooke, the main character, when she comes back into town, I mean, this is like in the early pages, she has a kid that she had in high school. So you can kind of do the math as to who the father is, right? And she didn't want to come back to the town because, you know, everybody knew what happened back then, and people told her she was wrong about Shane, and she got him put in jail because they were like in a real small town, as most of these books take place in small towns. So she didn't want to come back. Her parents died, and she had to come back and settle their home, their estate, and all that kind of stuff. So, as you can imagine, I mean, she works in a prison. She's a nurse, like she works in the infirmary. And at some point, her paths do cross with Shane in prison. And initially he's shocked, angry, you know, as you would think. But she sees that he has changed a lot. I mean, because I guess prison, it will humble your ass, I would imagine. If you're out in the world thinking you're big shit, well, now you're just a little baby goldfish in a pond of sharks. So, you know, the time that he's been in prison doesn't appear to have been kind to him, right? So as the story goes on and you go back and forth, and there's just starts to be this doubt that creeps in, even to you as a reader, because there's another guy who was also at the house, who was a childhood, I mean, like from like toddler type childhood friend of Brooks, next door neighbor and everything. Like she really grew up with this kid, and his name is Tim. And back, you know, when they were in high school and all this stuff happened, she had invited Tim, I mean, because that was her best friend. I think it was partly because she was like, you know, being dropped off around the corner by Shane, you know, sneaking around behind her parents' back. And Tim saw her one day. And I think she really invited him, like, so he couldn't tell on her, because you're doing the same thing. Like, you're here too and you shouldn't be here. So he went or whatever. And you start thinking, well, maybe was it Tim? Because he was at the house that night too, with 3 guys, like I said, and 3 girls, these 3 couples, when all of this shit starts happening. So, like, at one point I was confused, but not by the story so much as I was as to, like, in my mind, well, wait a minute. Did maybe Shane is innocent? Did Tim do it? And then, you know, well, no, Tim couldn't have did it, but who could have, you know, like there were all these theories, and not even theories. I really, that was one thing I have to say about The Inmate. I was so focused on the story, I didn't even really have time to plot any theories. You know, I had some guesses like, oh, whoa, how did our parents really die? Or, you know, like some thoughts like that popped into my head, but I never was like feeling 100% sure or steadfast on what was going on, why it was going on, and who did it, right? Which that I feel like is really the mark of a good story, where you're so engrossed in it, you don't even have time for any of this sidebar stuff where you're trying to figure out stuff before you get to the next page. You're just turning the next page reading. Because like I said, the backstory part, it was like you were in a whole different genre of the book. I mean, it really was playing out like a film almost. Then when you get to the midway point, you know, that's when everything starts to change, right? And as you're coming down, like after, you know, the rising action and you know, the climax, and you're like kind of right at the climax in that part where you're going down in the story arcs or whatever, my God, does it take off from there. And it is just, it's crazy. All of the pieces, how they start to fall together. And I don't want to tell y'all, like, I don't want to do any spoilers, but again, revenge played a big part. You know, that whole thing with the sins of the father, people being made to pay for things that something their parents may have done. That kind of comes into play. It's just so much happens when you think that, you know, when you think that, oh, okay, wow, that was the person, and, you know, now you finally got some resolution, but then you're like, wait a minute, there's still like 3 or 4 chapters left. This can't be it. And that's when it just goes off the rails, and you start seeing what really happened, and, you know, everybody just becomes so shady. Like, I'm reading this book going, girl, don't trust none of them. he did it, they did it together. Like, everybody on your street is involved. Everybody in your house is involved. I'm like, I wasn't trusting anybody at that point. Then we get to the end and we learn what really happened. But that's not even, it's the final chapter that gets you. It's the very final chapter, because now we are left with our mouths agape, and you're wondering if there's going to be a continuation of these crimes. And not because the author left you hanging, but because of what somebody did in the book, that you were not even looking at them to be a suspect, or even capable. Yeah, that the way that book ended, I was just sitting there going, what? I don't think I've ever seen a book end that way, where they bring in a minor character that you would not have given a second thought to think that they were capable of doing what they did. So yeah, overall, it was a really good book. Fast-paced, keeps you wanting to flip pages and scroll. And if you love books like that, and books that just like keep you guessing, keep you on your toes, that in the mystery and suspense there's a little kind of horror almost feel to it. If you love books that go from past to present, books that have like maybe a spin on a YA into a full-grown adult book, books with multiple characters, multiple points of view, then you are going to really enjoy The Inmate by Freida McFadden. So the only thing I didn't like, I know the author was probably using it as a mechanism for the reader to be like, oh, you're stupid, what are you doing? It's him, don't go there, like, for us to like get all up in arms, to see things that the main character may not see. I cannot stand books where they have the main character, usually the female main character, like be so oblivious and so blind to obvious things going on around them, and they question it, but they allow themselves to be gaslit to think that, oh no, you're wrong, or oh, I didn't know about that, when people are doing shit intentionally. And there were some moments like that in the book, but then as I continue to read after rolling my eyes, I'm thinking maybe it was something that the author did intentionally, but I still don't like moments like that where the women are made to look like they're just helpless, hapless creatures. But other than that, provided the escape I was looking for. And I would actually give The Inmate a solid 4 stars. So yeah, The Inmate. If you have read The Inmate, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. And when you read that last chapter, what was going through your mind at that point? And if anybody has read any of Freida McFadden's other books that you'd like to recommend, drop them in the comments for me as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. Go ahead, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But I know you probably have already done that. So I thank you. I thank you for that. Thanks again for watching. You guys enjoy the rest of your week.